So this is Nike's new Phantom 6 Elite and Elite High Cut. But did they just go backwards? Or are we actually making steps to improve an already really beloved football boot? Let's jump into it with today's video. What's going on, guys? My name is Noah Kavanaugh. Welcome to the world's greatest football store. In front of me are the high cut and the low cut models of the brand new Nike Phantom 6 Elite. These take a step backwards a little bit, but I think take leaps forward in terms of a few very key features. We have the high cut in firm ground in front of me here on my right hand side and the low cut in AG. We are going to talk about both boots and get them both out on pitch and talk about how they perform most importantly. Now, let's start off with the sole plate. So the sole plate for both boots has actually been updated. So I want to talk a little bit about this firm ground sole plate. Now, previous generation had the Cyclone 360 from the original Phantom Luna 1. This is still called the Cyclone 360 sole plate, but it's been changed quite a lot. There are some really nice inspirations from the GX1, which of course was one of the most beloved Phantoms of all time, and introduced Gripknit, which we'll get into in just a minute. There's a much more rigid midfoot here, which gives this boot a lot more snapback and strength through that midfoot, which was actually a big complaint of mine with the original sole plate and the GX2 sole plate. So they've done that really, really well. A little bit more rigidity there through this kind of spine area. They've also changed up some of the studs. So in the forefoot, we now have 4 conical studs, and then we also have 2 conical studs here in the rear as well, giving this boot a little bit more of that aggressive, but also a little bit more neutral Phantom look like we're used to from boots like the Hypervenom Phantom 3, which of course included bladed, chevron, and conical studs. So a little bit more mix here, while you still have the Nike Cyclone 360 traction here in that forefoot, those 5 bladed studs to give you good rotational energy and return on those firm ground pitches. I'm honestly very impressed with what they've done here. I think this is a massive upgrade over the first generation Cyclone 360 sole plate, and hopefully in terms of performance, this is gonna be just as good, if not much better. So the original AG plate was actually one that I had extensive experience with when the GX1 first launched. That AG plate, of course, came with a very similar stud pattern to this, but the studs were a little bit less tall, and they came with a stud pattern that was a little more narrow, similar to the first generation GX1 FG sole plate. These seem to be much more conical, a little bit more aggressive, and they've continued that spine through the midfoot, which means that although this is an AG plate, it's still going to get all of the benefits of a really nice and snappy underfoot feel, which was one of the main drawbacks of the previous generation. This is much upgraded, and if you can see in this forefoot area, it's a lot wider, which is actually going to benefit me personally as a wide-footed footballer, but I would imagine that this low top Phantom 6 is actually going to be the widest silo for all of the Nike boots. The AG plate is also awesome because in markets like Australia and the US, these are the boots that I think most people should buy, particularly with so many AG pitches being installed everywhere. Here in Melbourne, there are a ton of AG pitches. I personally go and play on a pitch called Darebin, which is where Northcote City plays, and that is an AG surface. And I will often opt for an AG stud pattern because it just suits the way that the ground feels underfoot. Not that the FG is bad by any stretch of the imagination, but picking the right stud pattern for the surface type, number one, is going to give you an awesome reduced risk of injury, and it's just going to give you better pivot power and performance on that specific pitch. So then we move on to the upper, and it seems like my original comment in the intro to have gone backwards from where we were with the GX2. With Phantom GX1, you'll remember that we had a double layer upper, Flyknit on the inside, and then the Gripknit element that had sort of been slapped on top of that Flyknit base. That's the exact same with both of these boots, similar to the low-cut GX1 and the GX1 DF. Very, very similar looking football boots. This one feels a lot more like a 1.5 edition of the GX1, despite the name change and everything else. So talking upper materials, what is in the new GX2? Well, they've combined a little bit of GX1, a little bit of GX2 into this new Phantom 6. Now, we still get this Flyknit base, really nice quality Flyknit, very, very similar to the GX1 in that under layer, basically. You have a nice suede padded heel liner that feels a little bit more plush than the GX2 did, mid, so a really nice upgrade there. You've got some slats here in the back for a little bit of extra stability and grip, and then the visual change really is the backwards Nike swoosh here on the lateral side of the heel area, which is actually quite spiky as well. And then from a Gripknit perspective, you still get this beautiful piece of Gripknit across the upper that sort of lays on top of the Flyknit base. Now this one looks very, very similar to the low cut model of GX1. This Gripknit, of course, being a pre-coated yarn that is then woven together, as opposed to a lot of other boots that are knit, which are basically the knit woven together and then a polyurethane coating put over the top of them. Basically what that does is that gives this Gripknit material really, really excellent flexibility, just like you do with a raw knit sensation, but it's got the built-in grip and sort of that waxy sensation that you would want from a control and power boot. If you wore GX1 as well, you'll recognize the lacing system from this one as well, almost identical with the bottom lacing covered by this Gripknit element here, which is going to give you tons of grip. Now, as far as these ribs go, these are ribs that are actually more similar to a Flyknit Ultra, which was a 2017 release, very, very special edition boot that Nike released to sort of tease what Gripknit was going to be. So you get those ridges similar to that boot, and also very similar to that OG kind of T90 rounded Cyclone look that the upper of the GX2 had. This is now a very similar vibe to that, but just now in ridges, and then you have a raised element right here in the striking surface area, which is a little bit more grippy than this teal color in orange, and then it's also a little bit more raised and a little bit more dense. So I imagine what that is really meant to do is give you that really nice sweet spot hit and a little bit of extra grip when you are using that part of the foot to kick the ball. Now, of course, with the Luna 2, we had a one-piece upper construction. This goes back to what the GX1 DF really was, which is that base of Flyknit, very, very similar to the low cut model. This, of course, now including Gripknit all the way up to the top of the lacing system area, and this sort of ghost lacing system that covers the laces makes visually to be a very nice looking football boot, and you're going to get that extra grip all the way into almost that heel area on the lateral and medial side, and then a little bit more grip over the top of the lacing system area where you would normally just have the laces. Even though they're going back to a very standard naming structure in terms of just a Phantom 6 low, Phantom 6 mid, or Phantom 6 high, I really like that they've made visual changes to the differences in these two boots instead of having the same color. So we can imagine, hopefully going forward, maybe the Gripknit will be the same on both pairs of football boots, but like this one being black with the Flyknit in the back and this one being more gray and silver accents in the rear area here. It gives the boots a very nice visual distinction so that not only are you noticing, of course, the high cut and the low cut, but you're also noticing and appreciating maybe the differences in color, which is really, really cool. Now, in terms of performance benefits, it's really hard to know without taking these out on pitch. So without further ado, let's rock and roll. All right, so Phantom 6 out on pitch, how do they perform? Let's go over the low top first, and then we'll get into the high top in a minute. Now, low top feels almost identical to GX1. So for those of you who liked the GX1 but maybe found it a little bit too narrow in the toe box, these are the boots for you. They perform almost identically, a little bit more texturing here on the upper with this sort of 3D rib texturing that I talked about in the tech specs portion of the video, but overall this boot fits fantastic for wide feet, especially here in this midfoot and forefoot area. As you can see, the stud pattern is actually quite wide as well, and on an AG surface like this, being indoors, this performed excellently well. I love the conical stud pattern. Of course, the chrome sole plate looks fantastic as well, and overall a really nice upgrade from what we got on GX2, but particularly an upgrade from what we had on GX1. As I said before, this one feels very, very familiar. I actually wore the low top GX1 in AG for the majority of my 2023 season, and this feels like just that little bit of an upgrade over that boot. Really fantastic in terms of fit and comfort, and overall just an excellent product to play in. I do feel like on these ones, the heel area is slightly wider than the GX2 in particular with the low top area. The knit feels very, very similar to GX1 as well, and then this Gripknit does give you a little bit more substance compared to the GX2, which of course had that Cyclone 360 patterning on the upper. This double layer upper is going to feel maybe a little bit more thick, so to speak, compared to that GX2, which is a one-piece upper, but again, for those who like the GX1, this is definitely the one to go for. Now moving over to the Phantom 6 High Cut, this is a boot that basically just elevates the grip and the lockdown of the low cut model. This is one of those boots that fits very, very similarly to the GX1 DF model, particularly with the upgrades to the sole plate. It just makes for a more cohesive and more responsive package overall. I really like the spine that they've put here through the midfoot area. Makes for a sole plate that's actually a lot more responsive on pitch. This is definitely a stud pattern that you want to stick to FG only surfaces because number one, you're going to lose your warranty, but number two, this is, especially here in the forefoot area, way too aggressive for AG, but really nice for those firm ground pitches here in Australia. Now in terms of the upper, it is a little bit more thick compared to the Luna 2, which this of course replaces, as well as the low cut model of the Phantom 6, particularly because you basically have 2 layers of knit and grip knit here in the lacing system area, and then it moves into that one piece just here in the forefoot, which is equally as soft as that low cut model. The heel feels really nice, and with this extra lace cover, you do sort of get pushed into the back of the heel area, which is nice as well. Really does give you that super locked in sensation. And in fact, I would argue that this one has a little bit more lockdown in the traditional sense of the word compared to that low cut model, just because you have this dynamic fit collar that sort of wraps your ankle area and really pushes you back into that heel, which at the end of the day is really what's going to make for the most type of lockdown. Now in terms of fit and sizing for the Phantom 6, this is a boot that fits me perfectly true to size in my normal 9 US, so I would strongly recommend for both boots going that true to size in your US based sizing. It's also a UK 8 for those of you who go based on UK sizing. This is a boot that definitely has a little bit more width in the midfoot and the forefoot compared to other boots in the Nike lineup. So if you're interested in a Nike boot but you want something that's a little bit on the wider side, this is definitely the boot that you want to go for. Now in terms of the widest possible fit, the low top is the way to go. If you're okay with a little bit more difficult boot to get on, but you still like that mid-cut design, the high cut model is definitely the way to go. Overall, performance-wise, these boots fit and feel exactly how you'd expect from a worthy upgrade to the GX2 and the Luna 2. All right, so that wraps up the tech specs and the playtest of both the low in AG and the high cut in FG. These are both fantastic new football boots from Nike. Really nice that we finally have, thank you, some wide-footed football boots as well. The Gripknit feels excellent on ball. It's very waxy, very sticky, has that really nice grip when you strike the ball, particularly when you're doing any sort of bended cross or shot. And the fit is excellent, really. There's nothing to complain about for me. The heel fits really well. The overall shape is really nice. If you have a narrower foot, I would strongly suggest going with something like a Vapor, which gives you the same type of grip knit. It's just going to be a little bit more narrow and better suited to your foot. As I always recommend, come into store in Melbourne or in Sydney and try on boots for yourself so you can get the best possible sizing, and then you don't have to putz around with any sort of weirdness when it comes to playing in your football boots at your top level. Hope you guys enjoyed today's overview and playtest of the brand new Phantom 6. My name is Noah Kavanaugh. Make sure you guys go over to Instagram at @ultrafootball. Check out our daily updates on all the best football gear and of course football boots, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time at the world's greatest football store.